Thank you for accompanying us today with the special screening of La Perla Victoria from Un Corazón Trans. My name is Sandra Diaz. I'm the narrative specialist in Alianza Americas, our national campaign for change in narrative. Before we begin, I want to mention some logistics aspects. This event will take place primarily in Spanish, but we have simultaneous interpretation to English. If you wish to listen to interpretation, you can choose the relevant interpretation channel at the bottom of your screen. We also want to remind that this is a safe space about learning and respect, to sharing your generosity while we share this time in community. And you will have the opportunity to send your questions for our panel. So if you want to send your questions for them to be answered, you can use the Q&A section at the bottom as well. For those who don't know, this is a national campaign for a change in narrative from Alianza Americas, who wants to visibilize the care networks used by Latin American communities in order to navigate their lives in the U.S. Our purpose is to understand how we value our family, care, and interdependency, contributing to building a more fair and inclusive future for all people. La Perla Victoria from Un Corazón Trans is a documentary created by Cuidar Cura and T4T Empowerment to amplify the voices, resilience, and leadership in the trans migrant communities. Throughout history of Victoria, this project invites us to reflect on identity, belonging, migration, healing, and collective care. More than just a film, this documentary is part of an initiative to bring these conversations directly into our communities through screenings and dialogues that foster connection, solidarity, and mutual understanding. Following its initial screenings in Chicago and California, the documentary will continue to be shown in community for a year before becoming available online. We hope this story inspires organizations, community groups, and local leaders to create their own spaces for gathering, reflection, and dialogue. And precisely this month, as we celebrate both LGBTQ plus Pride Month and Immigrant Heritage Month, we are delighted to come together to acknowledge the power of our stories. At a time where our communities face harmful and dehumanizing narratives, sharing our experiences in our own voices is a way to affirm our dignity, strengthen solidarity, and build collective care and power needed to drive change. It is now my pleasure to welcome the person who will moderate today's screening and conversation, Alex Córdova, Director of Community Outreach at LILA LGBTQ Plus Inc. and a board member of Alianza Americas. Alex, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you for taking me into consideration for this runway of beautiful women, being able to share with my girls as I share. As I say, I am Alex Cordova. I work for Lila LGBTQ Plus Inc. in North Carolina. Before we begin, I want to clarify that there shall be some scenes in this video that if somebody feels uncomfortable, they can leave the meeting anytime they want. But I also want to present at this time all of the before I play the video. Go ahead, girls, one by one. Please introduce yourself, say your names, where you're located, what do you do, and you are welcome to start. Victoria, go ahead. Thank you, Alex and Sandra. Hello. Good morning from California and good afternoon who in a later time of the day. I am Victoria Castro. I am a trans woman. I'm migrant from El Salvador. Currently, I am here in San Diego enjoying. It's a bit hot already, which is good. I am also the founder and executive director of T4T Empowerment. Many of the people who accompany us have had the opportunity to get to know me. They know I am involved in different movements in supporting the human rights of the trans community, the human rights of the migrant communities, and many other movements that, in one way or another, are interrelated. And we are fighting and working to build safer spaces for our communities and to bring La Perla Victoria de tu Corazón Trans to the community is a very wonderful opportunity to share my story, not only so that people can get connected, but to also understand how behind suffering and sad things, there can also be a path towards freedom, towards healing, and there can be things that we can build as a community. So that's a bit about who I am. I'm also a student. Currently, I am studying affirmation and media production to be able to continue telling powerful stories and to have these tools to be able to allow our communities to tell their stories from their own voices. Thank you. Thank you, Victoria. Sol Jiménez Palacios, go ahead. Hello, greetings. I am Sol. I was born in Hacienda, Mexico, but I was raised in Los Angeles. I'm currently working in an organization called Familia Trans Liberation Movement, which fights for the rights of trans and migrant people. My role in this documentary was to be one of the producers that came to update this documentary for it to come to life. But I appreciate that everybody's here since the morning until the afternoon, regardless it's morning or afternoon, wherever you're located. Thank you, Sol. Now, Ana Castro. Hi, I'm Ana Castro. I'm part of the Transgender Law Center. I'm the Vice Director of Communications. I've had the pleasure and honor to work with Victoria and Sol during these last years to ensure that the trans and migrant community, in particular the Latin trans migrant community, can exercise their power, whether it's here in the US or throughout the Americas. One of the things that I want to highlight of the work that we have done in the transgender movement and in the migrant rights movement is that we wouldn't have the power that we have nowadays without the effort, without the tenacity, without the beauty brought by the trans migrant community, in particular the trans women who have been fighting outside detention centers for throughout all Latin America, fighting for the rights of everybody. So it's an honor to be here present. Thank you, Sandra, for inviting me. Welcome, all three of you. I've also had the opportunity to work with Sol, done some small projects together, and we are here as a family. We are here to be able to appreciate La Perla Victoria. Before all of this, I think I mentioned at the beginning that if somebody, when you see the video, if they feel that it's a bit too graphic, that they're feeling uncomfortable, they are free to leave. La Perla Victoria de Tu Corazón Trans narrates the brave journey of Victoria Castro, a trans woman who was born in El Salvador and was faced to force due to the transphobic violence, and since she faced constant danger and even carrying the weight of her past, she she became a migrant towards Mexico seeking security. However, in US, she didn't find refuge. Instead, the dehumanizing system of the migration center where trans women face greater challenges of abuse and negligence. Her survival and transformation, living as a trans woman and as a sex worker through for almost 3 decades, resisting domestic violence and facing the cruelty of crossing borders. But it's also the story of healing and collective care, the family and building networks of love with a chosen family, and the joy of sharing a relationship with her husband, a trans man. Through this experience, Victoria personifies love and a benefit of healing that transcends violence. Her testimony sheds a light of the stories of the trans communities and the possibilities of fully living without apologies and in connection with everybody else. We are going to play the video now. Let's pay attention to those of you who are connected and the girls that are here in the forum. Go ahead, please. I always say that the greatest challenge I faced in my life has been becoming the woman I want to be. That has been the hardest and most difficult experience I've had. I am Victoria Castro. I am a transgender woman from El Salvador. I'm allowed. I love to party. I'm an exhibitionist. In my hometown, there was a trans woman. We used to pass by a business owned by this trans woman. It was an Avon sales boutique. She was blonde like me, tall, wearing crystal platform shoes, dress pants, and formal dress clothes. I would ask myself, who is she? I started taking hormones. They were not prescribed. I bought them at a pharmacy in our local market. I kept a wig and woman's clothes in my house. One day when I came back from school, my mom was burning all my clothes. And it was at that moment that my world shattered. I got into sex work. People can sometimes say that sex work is the only way that trans women want to make a living or that we enjoy it. I didn't need to sleep with men at age 16 or 17 because I didn't have food. It was my way to survive. I held on to who I am, the woman I wanted to be, and the woman I wanted to build. I could have given up who I am, my soul, my being, and stayed with my family, following their norms and traditions and being the man they wanted me to be. It's not a sexual aberration, but I like seeing you walk naked to the rhythm of your adventurous breasts, victims of gravity. I believe that my healing has taken place over time. When it comes to my family, for example, I took the time because to educate my mom and my dad and bring my family back into my life. I built a network of friends that for me are important. Into I can cry with them, yell, we can talk about nonsense, eat, go shopping, dance, get drunk, laugh, cry. They're moments for healing, moments to remember and to treasure. I began activism after many years in El Salvador. I got involved in matters of human rights. One time while I was working, a group of men in a car beat me up. They shot at me. When I woke up at the Red Cross clinic. I was beaten. They had taken out the bullet that I had. I have a scar here. I don't know. That was the trigger that made me say to myself, "You can't be here. You have to flee." I decided to buy a bus ticket. I crossed the border within between El Salvador and Guatemala, expecting to reach the border to the US. I had been living for over 10 years as a trans woman, expressively in my feminine gender. And they told me that I was a man and that I had to go with the men. And they would let me go out 30 days just to get some sunlight by myself. And I felt so humiliated leaving that detention center with a mustache, with a beard. They called me Mr. Lopez Castro, and I would just stay quiet, crying. My tears would be pouring down from my eyes. When I asked myself, what am I doing here? Having to endure people forcing me to do this. Most trans women and LGBTQ people seeking asylum suffer all the crap that the system puts us through just because they want us to make us go through these things. They tell us that because we are trans people, we we can't or don't deserve to have someone love us and respect us and not seek to humiliate and violate us. In Latin America and throughout around the world, we suffered domestic violence. If I wanted to be a woman, this was part of being a woman. If I was very grateful to be a part of this. I'm in a relationship with a trans person, with a trans man, and I'm a trans woman. The way he takes care of me, this sometimes causes conflict in society. People wonder why are two trans people in a relationship? Because that's how love works. Because that's the type of connection. Because you don't choose who you love. They just simply arrive. I can only take my clothes, get then strip in front of a mirror, in front of the world, in front of anyone. I can see myself and say, "This is who I am," and I had to affirm what my mind needed most, what my soul needed to find fullness that I needed at that moment. That's just what I want to say, that in the midst of all the pain, that was a little spark, that little grain that makes us happy or gives us happiness to go out and to fight every day for our lives, for who we are. I love seeing how the cacti survive in a difficult, rustic, harsh environment. It has the capacity to produce a beautiful flower when they bloom. And the trans lives survive despite all the pain. They serve all this garbage that society throws at us. I already cried. I already bled. I think that these things don't define us, but they have helped my soul to treasure each moment of happiness and each opportunity or chance I get. It makes me feel that in my next life, my next or other lives, I shall be a cactus. Please breathe deeply, Victoria Castro. A question for you, especially specifically for you, Victoria Castro. After seeing seeing this documentary one more time, what does it mean for you to discover yourself? Why? How do you feel? Thank you, Alex, for your question, for everybody for staying here and to see the documentary. It is always very heartwarming for me, and apologies if during the process I get a bit fragile when it comes to my feelings, but I feel that seeing a bit about my story reflected, it's very significant because I feel that as a trans person and as a migrant person, obviously there are many stories just like mine. Trans people have had to overcome these challenges, family rejection, rebuilding the family, or ourselves having to go back to our families, violence, transphobia, surviving feminicides, all of this many times is a heavy weight that we have to carry with us because the pain never goes away completely. It's part of us, it's part of who we are, part of who we've built. And unfortunately, due to things destiny and injustices and discrimination and transphobia we have to experience this, but for me to be able to see this stage in my life and being here and to share my story means a lot because this from my mindset and feelings, I think it's important so that other trans people, other migrant people can know that they're not the only ones that have had to go through these things. That yes, it's important to appreciate the love and these things, but it's also important to take this pain and turn it into power and to fight for injustices and all of this hate and try to eradicate all of this to avoid that they continue killing us and hurting us. So for me, it's very significant. We'll leave it there and we're going to continue this talking later on. The next question is for two girls. We're going to ask Sol, and we're also going to ask Victoria Castro. Why collaborate, Sol? Why this collaboration that where two organization, two trans people, two lives, two experiences? Why is it necessary to sit down and say, we're going to do this? We have to share this story. Why does this collaboration? Well, to provide a bit of a context, this idea came about in the beaches of Puerto Rico, when I was speaking with Janira Arias, who introduced me and told me about Alianza Americas and the work that they do. And they talked about Cuidar Cura. And she told me we want to collaborate with Familia because we know that the trajectory of the work of Familia covers the lives of trans migrant people. And this is where this collaboration comes about. And we follow up on this with Jimena Escalante, who was leading the Cuidar Cura project, who was also crucial in pushing this project forward. But more than anything, when this project began, I told Jimena that my priority was to have trans people who were the director, the composer of the music, the people that would help out to create the space and environment that's a safer space, in particular for Victoria to be able to share her story. Because for me, I've been friends with Victoria for years now, things we've experienced together, things she's told me about her life. And I feel that for me, it was very fundamental to tell her story because this story inspires me. And I feel that it can open more conversations and take into consideration who Victoria is. I feel that it's like a vehicle to bring these stories as to other audiences because it helps to tell the stories and give the context of what she's going through. So for me, that was crucial. That was why we did the collaboration. And Victoria, two trans women, but two organizations decide we're going to collaborate together, and I'm going to do this, you're going to do that. What was your experience as a trans director of, besides doing the video, for it to be your life and for there to be a collaboration from the organizations? Thank you, Alex. Yes, I think I personally feel that obviously I'm always open to collaborate with organizations because for me, the work is very important. And I always believe that collaboration and unity can change the system in a very impactful way. For me, to collaborate with Familia, with Alianza has been wonderful work because we've been able to tell this story. And the most important thing is that not only two trans people or two organizations, instead, something very important about this documentary, it's that it's created only by the community. There were trans people, there were non-binary people, LGBTQ people were involved in the creation of the entire documentary. So this is a documentary that is created from the community, from the very heart of the community. And the truth is that I am very grateful. I know that the people involved are very grateful of the time they donated so that this documentary could be completed, because even if we had financing, maybe not that much money available, but we did miracles with the amount of money we received. So making the most of the space we had, the people that have the money, and to say put the money in the trans stories that are being told by the people themselves. That's very important, to tell the stories from our own voices and to be able to tell them under our own terms. Thank you very much. The next question is for all three of you, but we're going to begin with Ana Castro. And it says, often you tell the stories of transgender women. Many people tell these stories, universities, the but what is the difference? Why is it important that the trans people themselves tell their own stories? Let's begin with you, Ana Castro. It's a bit funny because I'm the only person who is not a trans woman, so I'm going to start answering this. But I'm going to reiterate what Victoria and Sol said, that when you can tell your own story, it gives you the freedom to tell a different experience, to be empowered, so that in the most difficult moments you can see what opportunities or decisions were taken to think about in others. As we saw in the life of Victoria, I know this from my own story, that I've gone with Victoria to Washington and for her to tell her story in front of congressmen and women. But at that, when she's advocating for her entire community, she did it in El Salvador, she does it in the US. It says that it proves that you have power and autonomy over your life. And as an ally working at the Transgender Law Center, one of our focuses has been that we don't just want to give them a microphone or a platform, we also want to provide resources. And I think that this is another important part of the people themselves to tell their stories. We know that that nonprofit work, part of like the work that we do, is paid work. So to be able to create the opportunity so that people can receive money to tell their stories, receive money to provide training. And we had the pleasure of having Victoria and Sol in our conference a week ago to do a panel and a workshop using the story it's a beautiful story that she shares in this movie, to talk with the LGBTQ community, who sometimes is not thinking about the immigrant communities, they're not thinking about the trans migrant communities in order to provide this training so that they themselves can also understand that what we are fighting for the freedom of everybody, is a united effort that we have to do. And this is why I've had the pleasure of being in this panel. But I want to give an opportunity to Sol and Victoria to also share. Thank you. Sol, go ahead. I will go back to the question that you mentioned previously. Why these two organizations? Because something that was important is that when we began the collaboration with Alianza Americas, we had an honest conversation of what our bases are, the basis of family, the basis of Familia, and the base of Alianza Americas. Sometimes they include religious groups that are not necessarily always open to the LGBTQ plus communities, but it was important having this collaboration between organizations to start this dialogue of talking and answering questions, because the experiences with ICE are systemic and we have it as trans people and as well as heterosexual people. So I just want to highlight that point because of why this collaboration was crucial. Victoria, why is it important that the trans people themselves tell their own stories instead of other people telling their stories? Because other people will say, oh, they're nice people. I understand them. I care about them. I have a cousin who's now a female cousin who transitions. But why is it important that you, as transgender women, tell your own stories? Thank you, Alex. And historically, we've seen how people, I'm going to talk about not only as heterosexual people, but also about people from our own communities. I said, I'm going to tell the story of this trans woman because I feel it's interesting. But they show us an opportunity to be in a documentary, to be in a space where the community can see who we are, but they don't give us the opportunity to tell our own versions. These people record, edit, and include whatever they want to include in the documentary, and then these specifically these trans people don't have the opportunity to transmit their documentary, to share it with friends in community groups, because they no longer have the rights to tell their own stories. For me, it's important to highlight that the trans people need to have the autonomy to tell our own stories and to be able to transmit and sit and to play our documentaries whenever we want to without other people taking these stories and replicating them and benefit from and profit from the body and story and suffering and pain of trans people, because the stories of trans people are important that we tell them, and if we want to tell them under our own terms. So it's important for me this specific line where there are telling a story and using a trans story. So for me, that's why it's very important. I'm going to mention several things: an alliance to make a video, an alliance to tell a story. And I accompanied Anna to DC, so I'm sensitive to her story. And at the end of the video, you said, but when you die, you're going to be reborn as a cactus in the desert. I think that not will be when you die. Alianza Americas, I am part of the board of directors for years now. It has as its members many non-LGBTQ plus organizations. Blooming means an activity like this one where you're going to be replicated with 50, 40 to 50 organizations that are not LGBTQ plus, telling Victoria's Castro story, becoming aware that you have to make alliances with other organizations, that we have to have people like Victoria Castro to accompany us and support us. So from that perspective, I'm going to ask the following question. For what reason, what harmful narratives still dominate or still prevailing? We know the world is not transgender. We are the transgender people. But what still dominates here or is prevalent, I like when you said that they tell their stories in their own way, they edit it. What is it that's still prevalent, or what do you think that we need to counteract? What is the work that we need to do together so that the stereotypes are not harmful as they've been in the past? Anna, go ahead. Hello, Anna, can you hear me? I think that yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Yes, yes, we can hear you. Thank you. I think that the one that comes to mind is that thought that being a trans is it only happens something that only happens in the US. That I've heard many stories of many young trans people that tell their migrant parents that they are trans. What do you mean trans? You've been too Americanized, and that is something that happens in our own communities, thinking that being trans is a new phenomenon, that being trans is a trend or a fad, something they saw on TikTok. And I think that when we see the story of Victoria and she's talking about clothes that she would wear as a young girl. And I think about my own experience with my gender, where I, as a girl, I thought, why do I have to dress this specific way? Why do I have to have this specific appearance? And I notice that these things are present in our communities since a child. And sometimes you don't say anything until they're adults because they are afraid of family rejection. And I think that that's another part of a narrative, of negative narrative, to think that all Latin families or all migrant families don't support their family who's identifies as LGBTQ plus. However, there are many Latin or African American or Asian families who support them, and their for it to be their grandparents are trans or queer, and that's something beautiful to say that these stereotypes that they have in the US, thinking that the migrant community doesn't accept the community and or is homophobic or transphobic, also damages or harms the image that a child that's growing, that they can't tell their parent who they truly are. Thank you. Sol, go ahead. What can you tell us about this topic? I think that when people don't interact with trans people, you can notice in the video they create or the culture that they display visually, you can tell that they haven't interacted with trans people, and this that damages our humanization even more, because I feel that we can do better work be giving a more human perspective to our stories and maintaining the culture, because we the trans people have been here, we are at baby showers and parties. We are present in all industries. So normalizing our presence, I feel, would be more effective. So there are people that who do support and have learned to support their sons or trans sons or daughters. So it's something that I feel should be highlighted even more. Thank you, Victoria, very quickly. Yes, of course. For me, it's to reiterate that the trans people have been placed in this area of sexuality. We've been sexualized for a long time. So telling these stories can break this line, break this narrative that, oh, the trans people where there's a trans person, there's seduction and perversion, things that society thinks about. It's important that stories like this one can tell that we have been in spaces where maybe we didn't want to be, but the system has forced us to be there because of the denial of our fundamental works, the right to work, the right to health services, multiple things. These narratives change these stereotypes that could exist in the community to say, for example, hi, Victoria. Oh, Victoria only could only work as a sex worker. Yes, I have been a sex worker and I'm proud of being a sex worker, but I had to be there. It wasn't a decision that we took that I had to assume because the system put me there. So there are many things that they had to change the narrative so that people a proper understanding of how the story of a trans person has been and why they've been in those spaces, why they've had to survive these things. So that is very important. The Gay Pride Month, which is June, banks, businesses, stores, even those who had never bared a gay pride flag, they celebrate the Gay Pride Month. The question is, what opportunities do you think will we achieve with all these celebrations? And if this is making it possible as a social justice for the transgender community to change, or what benefits do you think that all this will bring us? I would like for us to be a bit honest. If it helps, if it doesn't help, if they are just using us, because on top of all this, we have the Migrant Heritage Month. So please, I would like Anna for you to tell us from your perspective, does it help does all this help the trans women? Well, I think that here within this group, in our community, doesn't need permission from anybody else to feel proud. Also, the migrant community, we're not waiting for anybody to give us respect. We know that we have the respect of everybody. And if somebody treats us in a negative way, that's their problem, not ours, because we are humans. I think that in months that focus on specific communities, they are more for the allies, thinking about how can I join this effort and the work we want to teach them and bring them with us to the manifestations, to go to read the articles about the Supreme Court decisions. So for us, it helps us, but it's an opportunity to be able to mobilize people for them to be more visual in their support, and this does help. We have to ensure that nobody thinks that for nobody to think that it's not popular to be trans or migrant because people like popular things. So if you're not talking about trans pride or migrant pride, it's something, even if it's something we're thinking, oh, I don't want to see any rainbows, but it does help if people, especially if it's somebody that's teaching, showing them the rainbow, that they're not waiting for that person to be supporting the LGBT plus community. Like my mother, who was a Jehovah's Witness, and she would get in trouble with any person. And apology, she got muted. She silenced her microphone. I understand. Thank you very much. Sol, go ahead. What can you tell us about that is helping us to, if all these celebrations are helping our cause? What is your point of view? In part, it's good to visibilize this, but what's also important is the action that comes after. The inclusion should not be limited to just 1 month or only during a specific month. And there are other ways that you can continue supporting the LGBTQ plus community without the flag or and without having like a show just for us, because sometimes I feel that they give too much of a show and there are other things that we can do to help us further. Thank you, Victoria. Go ahead. This is a very controversial question in general because right now, wherever I go, I see LGBTQ plus everywhere. There are lots of flags, and suddenly we're best friends with everybody. But in reality, I love living with pride to march and yell and to just play around, as they say. That's very important for me. And I think that people that are the 365 days of the year fighting for visibility, fighting to find resources for people who are less privileged than we are. Because even our in our own community, there are those of us who have different access to things, to resources and services. And I think I am constantly doing this, fighting constantly. And sometimes it's a bit uncomfortable when many companies, businesses, and everything arrive with their thousands of dollars of investment in flags and pins and small things only in June. I think that those investments could be done. They could invest directly in the trans movement and not investing all of this material to be just left in the streets for the say, oh, this company, oh, they are dog, they have this big float and everything, but what are they doing besides this? But the call is to say, what are they truly doing to support these movements, to support the trans people, especially because many of these people forget that the trans people are the ones that are there in the front lines and sacrificing our bodies and our identities and constantly fighting. So it's important to ask this question to them. What are you doing to support after July? Thank you. The next question says that in the documentary, there are topics of community belonging and resilience. How do you experience in your organizations those difficult times? So they're not going to give us any more money. The double standards, the police, the people that are against us, how is this resilience and this experience that we have in our soul as migrant people, how does it help us to solve or face difficult moments? Anna, go ahead. The I go think back to the first time I met Victoria, and I got excited because Victoria is from El Salvador, as my mom was. She came to LA in the 80s during the Civil War in El Salvador. So hearing my mom's story through Victoria's words, I felt proud of that lineage of women who fight when they see that there are no options, they find them, and they don't do that, but they also take care of others. So in difficult moments, I feel that there are always options. There's always something we can do, whether it's just giving food to somebody, cook a bit at night and to give to others. We always have the option to help ourselves and others. And I thank everybody that I've known in this work, that also in the migrant movement and the trans movement and the trans migrant movement, for showing me that there are always options, and that you have to be strong for everybody, and you have to be somebody. Apologies for the audio. She is breaking up and I couldn't hear the end. Apologies. Victoria Castro, very briefly, please. Yes, of course. I think that what Anna just mentioned, I think that the community, we've always been surviving. So if there is no money, we're always going to find the way to help other people and to help ourselves as well, because it's what we've done. It's what we've done all of our lives. It's what the system has forced us to do, to to continue fighting permanently and to support one another. That is our biggest it's our biggest foothold here. So we're always going to find a way to support one another, to how to find, how to ask, how to mobilize our local communities and say, for example, Sol needs this, let's support her. So that is part of what we do, of how we've grown up, of how we've developed one another, and this will continue. Thank you. Sol, go ahead. I remember what my parents said, that if one eats, then two can eat. If three eat, four can eat. So if we support one another and we resist any tragedy we experience, and if we have the opportunity to spend more time together, it would be, for example, like Victoria and her partner going to come to my home and stay over. We can create more confidence between ourselves and strengthen that trust in case they were or I were to need or she needs something in the future. We have with more confidence or trust we can create this. Thank you. Resilience, immigration, experience. We have it, we carried in our spirit. We are reaching the end, and I have a final question for all of you. We already talked about the month of June and about what happens during June. What does it mean for you to continue doing the transgenic work throughout the year, to be in the front page, to be repeating, whether there is money or not, whether there are resources or not? How are we going to do it? Or what does it mean for you to support and prioritize trans people throughout the year that we are facing? How will this resilience help us to move forward? Sol, go ahead. I feel that I'm always going in by waves because sometimes, yes, go ahead, go ahead. Sometimes I feel that things get very difficult throughout the year. For example, right now, Victoria is well aware that we have sisters that are in detention centers. They've been there locked up for months, so it's difficult to be have phone calls with them. They're suffering worse than we are, but I think that even if we are resilient, the tragedies that they're experiencing inside does impact us because they say how we talk about how the difficult times being experienced by our sisters. So, and I've talked about this a lot with Victoria because I know that we can process this together, and creating this friendship network of friendship that support us and helps me to continue advocating and for asking for more in favor of our community. Thank you. Ana Castro, go ahead. How can you help girls or women to continue working this topic, not just during month, but for the entire year and all the next years, all the coming years? It's easy. The the united people will never be defeated. We are there for everybody. We're going to fight for everybody at this time, even if it's difficult, because we know that here within this group, those of us in this on this call, we have the strength to defeat everybody. And I follow Victoria wherever she goes. Thank you, Anna. Thank you for that. I think that that's a very loaded question because there are many ways to how we can support one another. I am precisely a person that likes to mobilize a lot of direct and mutual help, as we say. I like to try to bring these resources, a lot of direct resources for the community to have autonomy to support themselves in the way they want. And I think this is how I'm a way that I'm trying to help to resist our communities, our vulnerable communities. For example, our older adult sisters, because there are many older adult trans communities that lived in other ages, and we are forgetting and thinking that we are no longer here and we are just, and that's it, just living. But it's very important to create these connections and try to create the community among ourselves, because something at the end of the day that I always want to mention is that we are not enemies amongst ourselves. The system has pitted ourselves against one another to see who earns more, who does more. But at the end of the day, we're in the same community experiencing the same hardships, and we forget that we have to take care of ourselves. And that happens in all communities, but it's very important to heal and to bring this space of mental health for ourselves and to prioritize that now Victoria is emotionally exhausted and I cannot be your support. I need you to be my support because I will be maybe the other 364 days I shall be supporting and fighting, but on this specific day, I need you to be my support. This should you're creating a culture of mental health is very important because sometimes we don't have these conversations amongst ourselves and that's important and something we've important that we've learned these last years because this work drains us emotionally as Saul mentioned if we don't have the energy to solve the problems of the community because we also have our own personal problems, but we want to be there for all those people who are locked up in detention centers, in prisons that the system has locked them in there, and not only in detention. So there are many ways where we can do this to create this resilience to accompany us constantly to continue growing as a community. And this is significant. It's very significant. Thank you very much. I know that we have questions, but we have run out of time and cannot answer them. If you can please send them directly to the panelists so that they, any moment, they can answer them. But we're going to wrap up with this. What gives you hope at this time? What message would you like to give? Please, very briefly, to those people that are listening, to the people who are present here because they're going to transmit this message because they will all this will be shared on social media and the video will be played. What message would you give these people? Very briefly, please. Sol, go ahead. A very short message. Well, to continue fighting and that we have more in common than you can think. And I've connected with people from the immigrant community that perhaps at first sight I did like a stereotype that we're not going to connect, but those very stereotypes that they have of trans people, they block us and I've had good connections with people that I didn't think I would have with them. So perhaps just have all connections. Thank you. Ana Castro, a final message, please. I don't have to know every detail of your life to tell you that you are family, that I care for you, and I wish you the very best. Victoria Castro, thank you. Please remember to take care of yourself, to take care of your bodies, take care of your mental health, break these walls, these systematic walls that they impose in the past, to take care of ourselves because that's very valuable. And if we take care of ourselves, we're going to, that is very powerful. To finalize, we've talked about communities, we've talked about belonging and resilience. In my work and daily experience, so you've had particular experience with the trans people. It's not that I have, instead, the work that they've done has been most difficult part. And they said it in a conference that a 70-year-old, a trans 70-year-old woman said that for me to be here and for you to be there. We have been given visibility to this. So I'm going to say it in my own way, the bumper of the community, the one that with the entire problem and of are the trans women. And me from LILA in North Carolina as part of the executive board of Alianza Americas, thank thank you for the opportunity you've given us or given me to moderate this panel and to fight and to be with these girls who are making history and who can do resilience so that the voices can be in the United States. So thank you very much. And I go back to Sandra, who is there, who's going to say goodbye to everybody. And we are always here moving forward. Thank you very much, everybody. And I just want to say goodbye and to wish you to continue enjoying the rest of your week. Thank you very much, panelists. Goodbye.